Welcome to the Ask Natchi show, and this is another guest edition. I love guest editions because it gives us new perspective, fresh perspectives from some of the most influential thought leaders and experts around the world. And today we have a very special expert guest with us who comes back to the Ask Natchi show. She's been on the show earlier, and this is Nona Jones. Nona Jones is the founder of Faith and Prejudice. She is the author and she's an entrepreneur, she's a speaker, she's a pastor, she's an executive, and she is currently the head of faith-based partnerships at Facebook. And it was an absolute honor and privilege for me to talk to Nona Jones and ask some of the questions that I wanted to ask on your behalf. And here is my interview with Nona Jones. Nona Jones, thank you so much for being on Ask Natchi show once again, my friend. It's such an honor and privilege to have you.
Thank you. No, this is always a privilege and a joy to spend time with you. I'm just grateful for your ministry and how God is using you, not just in this season, but the ministry he's given you over the years. So thanks for having me.
You're most welcome. And one of the things I want to start off is with your book. You have a new book, and it's a topic that you have been talking about for quite some time. So tell us more about the story behind your book. Why this book? Why this topic from social media to social ministry? That's the name of the book. We will link to the book in the show notes, and we'll let people know where to get it. It's available here, and it's available in Kindle, so people can get a hold of it. We'll let them know how to do that. But I want people to know from you a little bit of story about the book itself and how it came about and why a book like this.
Sure. Well, let me just first say I'm laughing so much on the inside because I never intended, it was never my goal to, become some sort of expert on digital technology or a thought leader, as people have called me. And I marvel when people say things like that, because the Lord called me to this. Let me first say, before I got into the tech sector, I worked in juvenile and criminal justice reform. I actually helped to lead a statewide network of alternative schools for girls in the U.S. here. Loved what I was doing. I really felt like it was mission work in my life. But the Lord called me to Facebook, and I was not expecting that at all. As a matter of fact, just to make a long story short, I know you've heard this before. I loved what I was doing, but God told me to resign from that. And he gave me a date, which I was completely shocked. I was like, Lord, well, what am I going to do next? And of course, he didn't tell me what he's going to have planned for me. But I resigned on the day he told me to resign. And 25 minutes later, I got a call from Facebook out of the blue, essentially asking me to help the company think about how to better serve communities of faith around the world. Now, although I had not been in the technology industry, I've been in ministry since I was 17. And so my heart, regardless of what I was doing professionally, my heart had always been ministry. So when I walked into this role, it really was me trying to think about how do we use social technology in order to help people disciple. And so that's really kind of what laid the foundation for the book, because as I was getting deeper into the work, I had so many churches in particular saying to me, Facebook is just something we use to tell people about our services, or it's something that we use to raise awareness about our events. And I thought to myself, I said, well, there's so much more that's possible. And so the book I started to write back in 2018. Had no idea, as nobody did, that coronavirus would essentially shut down every house of worship on earth this year. But we decided to release it in 2020. This was, again, back in 2018. We said we were going to release it in September 2020. And when I started to see things unfold with COVID, and I was getting inundated with asks to help people make the shift to online, I went to my publisher and I said, we've got to push this publication date up. I said, they need this information now. So that's really where it all kind of came from, was just a recognition that social technology is so much more powerful than I think ministries realized. And now they're seeing the capacity and the potential.
I always, when I look at a book, I just first go through the content and I kind of skim it. And when I looked at the content, I was like, what? I need to read that first. So tell us about it. What is Facebook Campus First? How did you even come up with that idea? Walk us a little bit through that.
Sure. Well, so there are so many pastors who, they're constantly thinking about like multi-site, so we have a campus here, we have a campus there, we have a campus here. But when they're thinking about it, they're thinking about it in terms of physical locations. And so what I was really submitting and positing through the Facebook campus idea is that you should look at your presence on Facebook as your online campus on Facebook. I can tell you in the United States of America right now, we've got about 77 to 80% of America is on Facebook. And so there have been many churches who have said, oh, well, we don't really want to do that. And I'm like, okay, if you knew that 80% of your city's population was located on one side of town, do you mean to tell me you would not have a location there? And they're like, of course we would. And I was like, that's the same thing with Facebook. And so the Facebook campus idea is really about leveraging all of the tools, the platforms, the surfaces on Facebook in order to create an experience and a place where people can go. And so you think about things like everybody has a page. That's great. But think about your page like it's your front porch. So, people walk up to the front porch, they see what you're about on a surface level. But there's not a lot of like deep conversation happening on the front porch because it's very public. But then you have Facebook Live and everybody's going live, and that's great. But live is just like you opening the front door. So you're letting people kind of, come in and maybe look around a little bit and see what you're about. But still, there's not a lot of vulnerability or transparency that happens there. But that's why you really need to also think about Facebook groups. And I spend a lot of time in the book talking about groups because groups becomes like your living room. It's the place where people can kind of come in and they can get to know each other. You can get to know them, they can get to know you, and you have conversations and ask questions. And so you want all of this as part of your Facebook campus experience because now people can connect with you on multiple levels. And to me, that's what a campus is all about.
Yeah. It is a fresh idea, but at the same time, some people looking at it are saying, "Oh yeah, we are on Facebook," like you said,
right.
Page, and we're already doing it. But I love how you go in the book. You go a little bit deeper on the actual practical aspects of it, like having a campus pastor for Facebook and having its own infrastructure and thinking of it just like another site, like you mentioned.
Right.
So have you what kind of challenges have you seen with people you floated this idea with, or people who are trying to implement it? What are some of the practical and mind level and thought level challenges you've seen with churches?
Great question. So the challenges I've usually heard are twofold. One is resourcing. People will say, well, we don't really have staff for that, or we don't have money for that. To which I say a couple of things. One, can you shift resources? Are you investing in some things that really aren't fruitful, but they're just things that you've always done? Because these are things that are going to return on your investment in the digital space. So that's one thing. And I think the second thing is just philosophical. There have been many people who have said, you know what, digital online church is not real. And, that contention has always struck me because I think, well, do you think the people are fake? Like, what exactly about it isn't real? Because you're dealing with real people. As a perfect example, there's a church that I'm working with right now, very large global footprint. They had went live, I don't know, this was a couple of weeks ago. And while they were live, someone posted in the comments, "Please pray for me. My 4-month-old son just died." And the people who were hosting the chat saw it, and they immediately reached out to the person through Messenger, and they found out that person was in Nigeria. And they were able to, through Messenger, video chat with that person, pray with that person, encourage that person. It's one of those things that, like, I hear all the time, and I see stories like that all the time. And I tell people, listen, there are people who are seriously hurting, and they can't, especially right now, they can't always access other people. And so in real, life tangibly, but this provides a real connection to someone digitally. So that philosophical pushback is one of those things that I always kind of look at and I'm like, which part of it don't you think is real? Because they're real people simply in digital spaces.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And what an opportunity to minister in a unique way. Just even thinking of it, it's easy to reach people. It's in a way, it's easy to do all the top of the funnel activities, and even engagement can be achieved to some extent. But going down at the bottom of the funnel, which is more of discipleship and touching lives, and just making a difference to individual lives, like you said, somebody who needs prayer for that kind of situation is I think it's possible only when we look at tools like Facebook as a medium of ministry in a new way, in a fresh way, and kind of adopt to it. So thank you so much for sharing that.